It was laid upon my heart to create a space on PETRIe, which we've entitled PETRIe Spotlight TV, this being the first episode. And I just wanted to create a space where people could have a community, could have support, and that people could learn to talk to each other. Because one thing that I realized is that, like, how many people can you say that you actually really know? And when I say actually know, I mean peeling back the surface, that external surface that they present to us on a daily, and really diving deep and dissecting to discover who they really are. And I realized that as a journalist, if I'm going to be interviewing people and this is something that I'm passionate about, then it's really important for me to be vulnerable and to tell my story first. So I thought, who better to interview me than my first cousin, the beautiful Aquila Enzor, who's joining us from Tallahassee, Florida. Aquila, thank you so much for doing this and joining the PETRIe family and joining the PETRIe team.
I'm excited, and thank you for choosing me. I'm honored, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. Okay, so let's begin with, let's talk a bit about this series of talks you mentioned earlier in the introduction and what it means to you and to PETRIe. Why do you do it, and what do you expect from it?
Journalism has always been something that's been really close to my heart. I think it's something that's come very naturally for me, but it's kind of something that I have to put to the side because with journalism now, you know, magazines are closing left, right, and center, and as an independent magazine, it's hard to get advertisers. So that's where my focus kind of shifted to celebrity styling. But when COVID-19 started, it created this, it was all timing. You know, Brillant, who works on the team, he's always been really passionate about PETRIe. And Elena, she emailed Brillant and she said, I really feel like we should be using this moment right now to really, this is what PETRIe is for. We're supposed to be standing in solidarity in this tough time of culture and society. So let's rejuvenate life into PETRIe. So kind of, and for me, I'm always like, okay, well, let's rejuvenate life, but if we're going to do that, let's have a plan, let's make it make sense. So that's where the idea of PETRIe Spotlight TV was born. And, you know, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be speaking to actors and actresses and musicians and models and DJs and activists. And here's the thing, I don't know what's going to become of this. And I think we often receive so much pressure from society to have to know what the end result is, to have to know how is this going to generate revenue, that a lot of amazing ideas get buried. I think it's important to just create. And that's what I want to do with PETRIe Spotlight TV. I just want to have these candid conversations, speak to people, ask them what they want to talk about, and then just where that may lead us to.
Honesty, authenticity, transparency, and openness are what we chase here, is what I'm hearing, right? So in this dialogue today, this is my hope, and I'm sure it's yours as well, that we dive into those things, into those issues. So what do these values mean to you? And how have you come to find them so important to uphold personally, professionally, and spiritually?
Honesty, transparency, communication, those are values that I hold very close to my heart. But they're values that I have not always lived. And I don't think a lot of people live them. I think people convince themselves that they are living honestly and that they are transparently. But a lot of times when you find out these people, there's a massive facade, there's a massive external surface that when you peel back, you know, you peel back the rug and you peel back the carpet, and there's maggots and there's, you know, it's just rotten. It's rotten. Especially coming from the African American community, I think we're taught to put on a happy face, and because we are a community of survivors, and our life, our history is struggle. We're kind of told not to show the struggle anymore. Show people, put on a happy face. And I think I realized that I'm tired of putting on a happy face. For what? You know, like if I wake up in the morning and I'm having a shit day, guess what? Today I'm having a shit day and I'm going to deal with it, but this is how I feel. I've recently learned
Right.
to acknowledge my emotions, acknowledge how I feel, but the big part of that is letting everyone around you know how you feel. Because
That's key.
a lot of times we might say, well, I'm upset today, but we haven't let everyone around, just so you guys know, I'm not feeling great today. So you
Mm-hmm.
might snap at somebody, you might curse somebody out, you might be, and that person might be like, well, wow, well, and then what happens is you make that person feel insecure, you make that person feel lesser than, because they feel like they've done something wrong when actually they haven't done anything wrong but exist
Mm-hmm.
in your presence, which in that moment may not be the best version of yourself.
Normally we'll say, hey, how you doing today? And you'll say, I'm good. But deep down inside, you may be hurting, you may be angry, you may be upset. So I like that. It's time to pull back the rug and let the maggots out.
Let the mag-
Okay?
I like that.
Let the maggots out. I mean, we just have to be real. When I think of you, Zadrian, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is storyteller. Right off bat, right? As a young man growing up in the country, as we say in the deep south in the country, you were a storyteller. Always have been since the day I met you. And today you professionally navigated to facilitate and create narratives. Right? So whether it be in fashion and the visual culture and journalism, today we are here to hear your story.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So today is your storytelling time. Today is for us to hear your story. And I think it's going to be profound. It's going to be amazing. So I want to know what makes your story unique and why tell it now?
The reason for telling it now is because I think in the last year there's been a lot of lights going on, the aha moments. There's been a lot of moments, you know, seeing my father after not seeing him for 17 years and hating him, actually hating him, sometimes wishing he was dead, sometimes blaming him for things that have happened in my life, you know, not speaking to my paternal side of the family because of my hatred towards him. Anything associated with him, I also hated. And I think there was a lot of healing that I had to go through. There's a lot of therapy. There was a trip to India. There was, there was a trip of my mother coming to London with my sister who was special needs, and for her to be thrown right into the midst of my truth. And I think when you see the two people who are responsible for your existence, despite all the mistakes and despite all of the errors that they've made, when you see the two people, like when I saw my dad and like when he started crying and when he like embraced me and just said the first thing he said to me, I haven't seen this man for 17 years. He hasn't been a father in my life. And the first thing he said to me, said, "I love you, son." And even though I couldn't say it back because in that moment that was a lot, like I remember hearing it, and the first thing I thought was, I wasn't expecting you to say that. And I think the second thing I thought was, well, do I love you?
Mm.
It's difficult. It's not, and you can't just, some things cannot just be hashed out in one answer. And some things take a process. I think the relationship with my father is a healing process. Bless him, he's trying to learn how to text me. But what I left Tallahassee with, hope. I left Tallahassee with forgiveness, and I left Tallahassee realizing that that's 17 years of communication with people that you've blocked that love. And it's funny because those were 17 of the hardest years of my life. When I tell you, like, rock bottom, and just like, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago and you were like, well, if you would have just called my mom, if you would have just called me, you wouldn't have been struggling how you were struggling. But it's funny how, and this goes back to the self-sabotage. It just goes back when we create these, oh my God, storytelling. We create these narratives in our heads of, okay, well, my dad doesn't like me, so I don't like his, then I don't like my Auntie Betty. I don't like his, like, create all these narratives that you start living, which is
Yes.
true.
Right.
And so I've recently had these aha moments, and I'm like, well, who am I fooling? I'm fooling myself.
Yeah.
The only person that's suffering, the only person that I'm fooling is myself. And I don't know how many years I have left on this earth, but I want to live the rest of my life as close to the truth as I possibly can. I know that my truth might hurt some people. I know that my truth
Hmm.
might offend some people. I know that my truth makes some people feel inadequate. But unfortunately, I don't care. Those are that's your issues. Those are your,
Hmm.
as long as I'm happy and comfortable in myself and I'm living in my truth. Anybody who wants to be a part of my very non-fictional narrative, who wants to be a part
Hmm.
of the story, then I welcome you with open arms. Anybody
Hmm.
who wants to be a part of a fabricated, trying to fit in, trying to be something that I'm not narrative, I can't continue to do that anymore. And I won't, I can't come out of this 10 weeks, 12 weeks of being on quarantine and lockdown and the years of my life without there being some growth.
Yeah, there has to be growth. It has to be. And now is the time to do it. I totally agree with
And
that.
everyone has to grow in their own time. Like, like my 19-year-old self would not have understood. Well, actually, I can't say that because my 19-year-old self didn't have any of this. There was none of this verbiage was being thrown my way. When I was 19 years old, I was being told that I was going to be burned in hell for being gay. You know what I mean? So like that,
Hmm.
the narrative that was being thrown my way was hate. So unfortunately,
Right.
I was receiving hate. I projected.
Right. And I want to circle back to where you said that um you hated anything that had to do with your paternal side, um, or hated anything connected to your father.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned self-sabotage, right? And you are connected to your father because he is your father, you're his child biologically. So how do you think, so do you think that you hated yourself or self-sabotage yourself because you were connected to your father, or
Yeah. I think I hated myself because I felt like my father did not give me the opportunity to have a father. I will
mm,
I will never know what it's like to have a father. And sometimes I think it's two things that happen. Whenever I see, a father pushing their child in the pram, um or I see a dad and a son playing basketball, I get tearful because I'll never know what that feels like. And I think I just to rob a child of that, even though I love my mother to death, and even though my mother made mistakes in her rearing of me, all in all, she was there. And
mm-hmm,
even though her presence, at least I have some kind of relationship, some kind of tangibleness to touch, and I can say, well, this is what it was like for me and my mother. I don't have that with my dad. Even when I would come to Tallahassee for the summers, he wasn't there.
mm-hmm,
He'd come into the house late at night, and by that time we going to sleep. So I just will never know what it's like to have a father, and
mm-hmm,
that is like that's deep. That's deeply profound, and I think that's tough because you constantly see other fathers and you constantly see other children with their fathers, and in high school, parent teacher day, you see all this, and
mm-hmm,
so I think and of course the narrative from my maternal side of the family was that your father ain't shit, he ain't about, like, what it's like. Your dad is a deadbeat dad, this, da 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 da. So you're receiving this narrative from your family about what your father is, and whether or not that narrative is true or not, you have to be careful what you tell children about
yes,
parents. Because, well, if the narrative would have been, Zadrian, your father's having a difficult time right now. He's not able to be there for you because he's dealing with substance abuse and he needs to work on that. Then you become empathetic. But when the narrative is your father don't care about you, he ain't paid child support in 3 years, he's a deadbeat dad, da 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 da, then what else are you supposed to think?
agree. And I remember growing up, we had these conversations about I wish he was dead, and and I would say, well, Zadrian, you shouldn't wish that, because here I am. My father is dead.
Right.
So, there's always room for hope. And I'm glad that when you saw him in December, that when he said, "I love you, son," it gave you hope.
Yes.
Because even though those years are gone, you still have years ahead of you to still build that relationship. And I believe that will be a time for healing, not only for you, but for him as well.
Yeah.
And, and I believe you guys will get there, because you'll never get that time back. And that's just part of your life journey, right? That's just part of your journey. It's part of your process.
Right.
So I think you guys will definitely get there.